In this video, I'll be going over two of Catchpoint's major differentiators, zones and hosts. Let's jump in. Zones and hosts are all about saving time when triaging an issue or troubleshooting a poor performing web page or application. Now Catchpoint and many of the other solutions out there, they have all the data for you to comb through, but the task of finding the root cause can be laborious. What zones and hosts bring to the table is the ability to weed through this big data by segmenting it into different buckets and removing all that noise. Now you'll quickly see, is the issue coming from my local area, an individual third party, or maybe a specific domain or group of requests? And we can track this data over time so you can see if it's a one-time occurrence or a chronic issue. Now there's no right or wrong way to use zones or hosts, and you don't need to use them in conjunction with each other. However, here's some insight on the best practices when it comes to using these features. Now let's start with zones. Now the power of zones is that it allows you to pattern match using a URL and then segments or bucketizes this data into logical groups. So in this example you see three different zones: CDN, self, and third party. Now looking at the test data, we see a large spike. And the same spike when you're looking at the zone data. When I cursor over this spike within the zone data, I can see what's causing it, and it's self. Now when I go over to the side, when I hover over CDN, it's not CDN. When I hover over self, sure enough, there's the spike. Third party, same deal, it's flat. So this is the power of zones, is it quickly identifies where the problem is happening, the root cause. To configure a zone, simply go to the gear icon on the left side, click, and go down to Zones. This takes you to the zone page. You can see other zones that we've already set up. To create a new zone, simply click on Create. Go ahead and give it a name and hit Save. Now it shows up in the zone column. To configure this, click on that specific zone you just created and hit Create again. Again, give it a name. And from here is where you define what you want this to do. Here it can be a request URL or initiator URL. You can match it by host, host and path, URL, or an IP address. Turn on regex for regular expression, and if you want case insensitive, go ahead and configure it. And here's where you would type in that regular expression and get as creative as you need to be. That's how you configure a zone. Now, once you have that zone configured, you need to enable it for a specific test. Let's check that out. First, I want to point out two zones that come default with a product. And it's the two that have the brackets around them: self and third party. Now these two zones are what I'd call simple zones, as you have very limited options in defining them. So here I've moved to the test properties of that specific test, Amazon Home. And you can see the test URL I've specified is www.amazon.com. Now to see the host and zones, you need to go to Advanced Settings. Here, I'm showing the inherited settings. You can see host and zone data has already been enabled. And down here you can see self zone is matched by the test URL. So the test URL was amazon.com. Anything that doesn't match amazon.com automatically becomes a third-party zone. That's how it's configured. Now remember, I just set up a custom zone for catchpoint.com, and you can set up 10 custom zones using regex. So it's much more advanced than setting up these simple out-of-the-box zones, but it gives you third-party and self to quickly identify those aspects. Another powerful feature of zones is its ability to alert off a specific zone. So within alerts, if I create a new alert rule, the alert type, I scroll down to zones, here's all the attributes that you can alert off of within zones. Hosts, you cannot alert off of a specific host. So that's another power of using zones. Now let's look at host data. And as you can see, host data provides very detailed information listing out all the components that were part of this transaction. So it's showing URLs, servers, applications, just a mountain of information. And looking at the host detail, we can see this file, images-na SSL images at amazon.com, was part of that spike. And also, I scroll down, amazon.com. So when I click into this for deep dive analysis, I'll click into it. We're taken to our waterfall view, and we can see we have that spike automatically selected. And again, I can remove the noise. So in the zone, I'm going to click on self, because we know it's self that caused it. And now we can see very quickly, here's that file we just highlighted. We verify where the problem is happening. So that's the power of using zones to alert you, then using hosts to do the quick deep dive to understand exactly what it is. That is the use case for using zones and hosts, and a major differentiator for Catchpoint. Sponsored by Catchpoint, the leader in digital experience management.